Hello, my friend, and welcome to Transformers University. I am your host, Anthony Brucali, owner, operator, webmaster of TFU.INFO, and this is a very special 15 and a half edition of Transformers University. Now, why 15 and a half? Well, what happened the other day is after I published episode 15, I received a couple of submissions for episode 15, and I didn't want to let them go to waste. So before we move on from the 1985 Autobots, I figured let's get these in because apparently, given the reaction to the episode and some of the messages I received after the fact, I just wanted to make sure all of our bases were covered. And clearly, this year of toys and a lot of these characters are very near and dear to people. So why not give them all the coverage they deserve? So first up, one of the people I reached out to for this episode was Vangelis from WTF at TFW podcast, and he's also a very prolific YouTube reviewer, and he got back to me with his thoughts on the one and only Perceptor.
When I think of the myriad of Autobots to choose from the 1985 Transformers toy line, eventually my mind settles on one thing, and that thing's name is Perceptor, and he's not a thing, he's a person, Transformer. That toy is obviously one of the imported into the line figures from Microman, but there's something about the figure, leaving my childhood attachment to it aside, that just holds up to the test of time. It's got a very solid and defined robot mode, a solid and defined microscope mode, and then the hidden quote-unquote third tank mode that rather brings the whole figure together. Not to mention the denseness of the build and all the moving parts for a 1985 Transformer. Perceptor is definitely up there for me. Faceplate aside, the character is evoked heavily through the figure. It's not often outside of other toys called Perceptor you get a working microscope. The tank mode lets him kind of hang with other Transformers when you don't want to just have a giant microscope standing in the background. And as much as it is a weird thing to come back to on a G1 toy, the articulation on this dude is friggin' solid for the era. You go, Perceptor, you show them your big old Perceptor kick.
And once again, you can catch Vangelis on his own podcast, WTF at TFW, and that's available pretty much everywhere this podcast is available. And you can catch him on YouTube at Vangelis Reviews. And I'm glad he mentioned Perceptor because I thought I had some great audio from Yoke-san that I had captured at HasCon about Perceptor. And it turns out he was talking about a different figure. So you'll have to stay tuned to find out just who he was talking about, but I definitely will be using that sound clip at some point in the future. Also, I heard back from Gabriel Owens, the Salty Sea Man, who I talk to every day. I know you hear him on the show a lot. He is one of my closest friends, and we text all the time. So he said that episode 15 had given him a bit of a spark of inspiration. He's like, I'm going to record something and send it to you. So I said, go ahead. And he ended up sending me almost 18 minutes worth of content. And I can't use all of it here. I'm not going to use all of it here. There's certainly stuff that will apply to things I'm doing in the future. So I may cut a few things out of it later on. But he went through some great lengths as a child, how badly he wanted Omega Supreme. And I'll just let him tell you that story.
Omega Supreme, as I mentioned before, was one I really, really wanted. Now, one of the funnier ones I definitely remember was for Omega Supreme was my neighbor had a go-kart. And me and him drove, like his dad made a little, just a tiny track in their front yard by their driveway where we just go around in circles around and around on this little go-kart. Just either driving it or someone acting as the side hack on it. And we had a blast on it, and then at one point they said that, well, I think he just got tired of it, or whatever the case was, his dad was going to sell it off. And my friend came to me, it's my friend Brad. I still have him on Facebook. We were neighbors growing up from like 8 to 14. And he says like, hey, it was really dirty and kind of beat up, and he had said like, hey, we're going to sell this for like $200. But if you come over and help us clean this up, because it was dirty and grease everywhere. It's like, hey, we'll give you like $50 which of course is huge dollars for like a 9-year-old. So I was just like lost in this just for like 2 weeks. Like I kept asking, like, when are we going to clean this thing? When are we going to clean this thing? When are we going to sell it? And they're like, oh, well, hold on. And of course, I was like, Omega was going for about 40 then. And there was one at the local store by my mom's work, which I'd seen 100 times walk by. And I was like, oh man, I'd really like to pick that up. And so we ended up, I think we spent a Saturday, just me, him, my friend Brad, I was 9, he was 7, and his dad. We spent probably a good 4 hours one Saturday just cleaning the thing. And remember, I got this information from the 7-year-old. His parents didn't tell me, like, yeah, we're giving you $50 for this. And of course, the guy, his dad ended up selling the go-kart off for however much he sold it for. And then, I went by and asked, it's like, hey, did you sell the go-kart? He's like, yeah, we sold it to the guy and his kid. And I was like, well, where's, my chunk of the money? And then my friend starts hemming and hawing. And so now I'm pissed because I put the work in. I was expecting this. So I go talk to his mom. Like, I think his dad was at work at the time. And she was like, who told you were getting $50 for that? Like, we can't afford to give you like a quarter of what the go-kart is worth for just for cleaning it. And she felt bad enough. My friend Brad's mother, Cindy, wonderful woman. I think she gave me $10 out of her purse. Like, well, here's $10 for the cleaning job you did on it, at least. Not the first time I'd get ripped off for money for hard work, and definitely not the last. But I definitely remember that and just being so, effing, disappointed, angry. But mostly I was mad I did not get my Omega Supreme. I think I spent the $10 on Onslaught.
And again, you can catch Gabe on YouTube at youtube.com/recharge138. He is the Salty Sea Man. And you can catch him on Twitter at Gabe138. And like I said, he recorded a lot of audio for what he had sent me. He does, I believe, he mentioned to me he might publish it on his YouTube channel. So go over there and subscribe, because he'll certainly want to put this audio out, and it's really good stuff. So you should check it out before I use it. And it may be a while before I use it. And that will wrap things up for this very special 15 and a half edition episode of Transformers University. And if you're listening to this on iTunes, on Google Play, on Stitcher, please rate and review us. But also keep in mind, you're hearing this several days after our Patreon students, as I like to call them, our Patreon supporters have heard it, because I am right now recording this on a Thursday, and I am probably going to publish this on a Thursday. And so if you're hearing this on the weekend or on Monday, whenever I decide to release it to the rest of the gang, you could have heard this a few days ago. And that's the kind of things we're doing over at Patreon. And we're trying to hit our goal of 100 patrons, where I then go and recut Combiner Wars, hopefully into something a bit more interesting. So come on by there. You also get some bonus entries in our 1,100 giveaway contest, where we will be ultimately, hopefully, giving away a Studio Series Thundercracker. And the only way we get to do that is if we get to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you're not subscribed on YouTube, youtube.com/TFU.INFO. The Patreon that I mentioned earlier, patreon.com/TFU.INFO. The website is always TFU.INFO. Facebook, Instagram, either one, /TFU.INFO. And on Twitter at TFU_info. Once again, thank you for listening. Thank you for enjoying the show. And thank you to all of our supporters out there, whatever you may do. Until next time, see you.